Hi, I'm Chris Alexander with the Saratoga Springs Public Library, and we're very excited to have Deb Czech back, and her program today is Summertime Vegan Desserts, which sounds amazing. And there's a recipe packet that I've sent to everyone who registered with the 3 recipes from today, plus a bonus recipe. And at this point, I would like to let you know that we'll take questions at the end because we're recording it. And I've muted everyone. And if you would stay muted when you're not talking, that would be great so that the recording comes out well. And then we'll, as I said, we'll take the questions at the end. So this is Deb Czech of Planted Platter. And some of you know her from previous programs and from being in the community. She's fabulous. And so take it away, Deb.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back with everyone today, cooking some desserts this time. We've done sandwiches and bowls and soups and stews. And this is the first time we focused on some sweet things, which was kind of fun because I'll be honest, I am not particularly a dessert person. As my family knows, and laments, I am not a chocolate chip cookie baker on a regular basis or other desserts. So this was a good chance for me to dig into things that I'm less inclined to look at. And I think we've got some really fun recipes, delicious recipes. I did, as I put together today's packet, want to emphasize, and you'll see it emphasized on the very first page, fruit is the best dessert. So from a plant-based or vegan, healthy diet perspective, certainly fruit is the winner for desserts. I'm making some things that use fruit in various ways, and I'm trying to use fruit as garnishes, but not all the recipes today are really fruit-based. These are more maybe special occasion or special treat desserts, but I did want to make it clear that as a general rule, I do not eat chocolate mousse every night after dinner. I think it's great for a treat, and we all need those treats. And one thing we can do with these desserts is look at the portion size and try to create a beautiful dessert that also has some fruit in it, so that we don't have, a large soup bowl full of chocolate mousse. But you'll see some information about fruit and about sugar and some of the other ingredients that are in vegan desserts on the I guess it's the second page behind the cover page of your packet. I'm not going to talk through all of that now, but go ahead and take a look at it. And if you have any questions about it, we can certainly take those questions at the end. I want to make sure we have time to get through the recipes. So we'll go ahead and start. I've put under the camera for now some visuals of the chocolate mousse recipe. I went ahead and made it already, and I will make it again on camera, but I wanted you to be able to see it garnished and whatnot. And this is after it's chilled, after it's made. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, but let's go ahead and get started with the first recipe. I'm letting some of the fruit for the nice cream thaw right now, just a little bit. So we'll hold off on that, and let's go ahead and do the chocolate mousse recipe right now. So when I teach a class, I always have everything on trays. So pardon me while I zip off to the side there to retrieve my my goodies. And I also need to go retrieve my burner. I'll be right there. Actually, I guess I don't need that for this recipe. I am going to microwave it. You can make the chocolate mousse recipe, melt the chocolate chips in a double boiler, which is the way I did it before. But I'll go ahead and use the microwave so I can continue talking easily. So if you take your chocolate mousse recipe out, you'll see there's a variety of ingredients, and probably the one that may surprise you is tofu. So there are lots of ways to make a healthy vegan chocolate mousse. Sometimes people use avocado, but I was really intrigued with this tofu because it uses this shelf-stable tofu that comes in this little, I think they call it a Tetra Pak. It's a vacuum-packed carton. You can also find tomatoes now in the grocery store in these kinds of cartons. So this is shelf stable. You can keep it in your pantry, and you'll find it on the shelves at the grocery store, often in the international aisle with the Asian foods. And this is the Mori New brand. There are probably other brands, but this seems to be a frequent one in supermarkets. It's silken, which means it's very smooth, but it comes in different levels of firmness. So this is extra firm. I actually made the sample mousse that I was just showing you with the firm variety. Either is fine for this recipe. So this morning I'm going to use this extra firm box. The other ingredients we have are some chocolate bits. These are actually almost chocolate nuggets. These happen to be made by this company called Hue. They're really delicious. They say they're for baking or snacking. Pretty dangerous packet to have in the house. But we're going to melt these. You can also use a nice bittersweet chocolate chip. Another brand that is vegan is this Enjoy Life brand, these mini chips. I'm not going to use those right now, but you could. These are relatively easy to find. And you can use regular chocolate chips as well. Just make sure they have no dairy in them. Sometimes chocolate chips have milk products in them, and you can just read the ingredients and check that out. So, you know, a variety of chocolate options. You could also use a bar of chocolate and just chop it with a knife into chunks and then melt it from there. The other ingredients in this recipe, we've got some almond milk, we've got vanilla extract, some maple syrup in reserve in case we need it for sweetening. It sort of depends on how bittersweet your chocolate is, whether you'll need that sugar or not. And a little bit of salt. It kind of gives a nice flavor boost. So that's what we're working with here. I'm going to start melting the chips in the milk in the microwave. Let's put those in there. And then I'm going to actually make the mousse itself in the in a blender, a high-speed blender, which really whips it up very nicely. You could also use a food processor. So let me just put this in the microwave. I mentioned you could also use a double boiler if you don't want to microwave it. I don't have a double boiler. That was something my mother had, I think, when we cooked in the 70s. It was common then when people were making cream sauces. I just take a small saucepan and put it in a medium saucepan. Put water in the medium saucepan and set the small saucepan on top of it, and then put the chips and the milk into the small saucepan. So you're basically shielding that little saucepan from the direct heat of the burner by setting it in this water bath and then heating up the water bath instead. That works fine also. So you can improvise if you need to, or use the microwave. Let's see, I'll get started cutting open this box, which can be a little bit tricky. They do put little dotted lines along the carton for you to make it easier. So you just cut off the two little corners, or ears, I guess you could call them. And then there's a dotted line across the top. So this is not the tofu that, and I put this in the notes, that you find in the produce section that's packed in water. There is some water in this that we'll just dump out, but not nearly as much as the other tofu. In fact, I will get a bowl and dump it out, just so you can see the tofu. I'm going to first dump a little bit of water. There's not very much in the sink. And then I'll just kind of squeeze this into the bowl until it all comes out. There we go. Yeah. So you can see that it comes out in a solid form, and I don't know if you can tell from the light on the tofu block, but you'll see it's not porous. It doesn't look sort of spongy like the tofu does that's in the water, that's packed in water in the produce section. So this is sort of a more solid block of tofu. And it's got a wonderful texture, and you will not taste the tofu when you're done with this, I promise. So let me see how those chips are coming along. Yeah, so you can see these, the chips are starting to melt. We're kind of making a fancy chocolate milk here. And we're going to put this all in the blender, so it does not need to be perfect because the blender will do the rest. You think about what goes into a traditional mousse with cream and whatnot. This is really fast by comparison. So I'm going to go ahead and I've set my blender up behind me. It's quite loud, and I'm just going to blend it very briefly, and then I'll show you the results. And the chocolate and the milk go in. Here comes the loud part. And it's really got a very creamy texture already. Pulling a little bit of chocolate off the walls of the blender there. I did note that you should taste it just to see if you need that maple syrup. Of course, you can add it, but you may not want it. It may be sweet enough as it is. I'm opting to put it in. Okay, so sorry for that time away from the camera. I don't know if you can tell, but you see how when I shake the blender, it's kind of almost, it's not gelatinous, but it looks like it. You can tell there's some substance to it. So it's already wonderfully creamy. And this was exactly the way it was when I poured the last batch into those glasses. And I like to do these in a small portion. It's very rich because of the amount of chocolate that's in it. So I'll show you some options. Maybe you'll have some thoughts as to what you have at home. So this is going to go into the refrigerator to chill for several hours. I'll show you these little glasses. Let's see if I can tilt it enough so you see the glass without putting it all over the counter. So these are actually, I think, I don't know, cordial glasses or something. They honestly were hand-me-downs from someone in my family, and I don't use them especially much, except I love to put sweets in them because they're a nice size for a small sweet. This is about a 1/4 cup of the mousse, and that's what I suggested as a serving size. I also used a stemmed wine glass, and this also is about a 1/4 cup. Let me see how I can tip this up. You can see that better. Adventures with the iPhone. There we go. So now you get a sense. You know, it's a small wine glass and it's about half full. But these are all a 1/4 cup because I actually got the dishes out and measured them. So those are some possibilities. And you can see I've used a variety of toppings on those: strawberries, coconut, orange, mandarin orange segments, and some raspberries. And those are options. you know, if you have like a little rice bowl, this is a rice bowl, you can fill that up to the line. Again, it's just a 1/4 cup. It looks big, but it's not. Or you can use something like a ramekin, you know, a white ramekin. Probably best to avoid the larger bowls only because that tends to mean you'll put a lot more in it, and it's really pretty rich. So I think a small amount is a perfect amount, and then serve some fruit with it, maybe. So that is our first recipe, the chocolate mousse. Later, I will put everything that's in this blender into these dishes and chill them up. And I guess I need to have a dessert party. I'm gonna have a lot of chocolate mousse. So let me just clear this away for a second and we'll move on to the next one. Try to clean up as I go, so it's not too crazy at the end. I'm going to move these things off to the side. And I'm going to check on my frozen fruit because for the nice cream, we want the fruit to still be quite frozen, but not rock hard. And actually, this feels like it's getting to the perfect stage. Those are the bananas. And these are the peaches. So I think, let me see if the peaches, they have more water content. So sometimes it takes them longer to thaw. I want the food processor to do some work, but not overheat or break. So yeah, these are manageable. So if you want to flip to the nice cream recipe, we'll do that next while this fruit is at the perfect cold temperature. And for the nice cream, the ingredients are very simple. It's bananas that I sliced into coins and frozen, some peaches that I peeled, and again, sliced into chunks, and I froze those, a little bit of cinnamon, and about a 1/2 cup or so of almond milk that I'm going to add slowly. Maybe I'll add a 1/4 cup at first and just see how much is needed. You know, different fruits have different amounts of water content. So depending on what you end up using in your nice cream, you may need more or less almond milk. Sometimes you won't need any. And you can really make this nice cream, so-called, of course, because it's a lot nicer to our bodies than traditional ice cream, or even the vegan substitutes, which tend to have a lot of extra things in them and ingredients that are not so healthy, like coconut oil. Coconut oil is a really frequent ingredient in vegan ice cream, as well as vegan baked goods. It does produce a really nice creamy texture, but coconut oil is about 91% saturated fat, which is way more than butter. I think butter is about 65 or 66% saturated fat. So coconut oil, I try to avoid. I'm not saying I never buy that, but I try not to. And I much prefer the flavors of fruit-based ice cream. So that's what we're making. So this is, again, in the food processor this time, a little bit noisy. So I will step back and make that. But you can see while I'm doing that, read some of the variations that are suggested here in terms of other fruits you could use, or also if you want to stick with straight banana and then add something like cocoa powder or almond butter or peanut butter, or both of those things to the banana, really delicious. You could also, instead of using, for those recipes with the cocoa powder or the peanut butter, I find sometimes a little coffee mixed in, cold coffee instead of the plant milk. And you can use decaf, of course, but just that flavor with the peanut butter and the chocolate, that can be really terrific as well. Not only in ice cream, but also in smoothies if you're making something a little bit more liquid to drink. Sometimes a little coffee flavor is very good. So again, I'm going to step back here to the food processor. And actually, maybe I can just move it here. This counter always feels plenty large until I put a computer on it and a phone and a stand and some equipment. And then it feels a little tighter. All right, so let's see course, you're not going to be able to watch it because of the lid, but I'm going to put in, this is 2 bananas. And it was about 2 cups of the peaches. I think it was 3 actual pieces of fruit. I'm just going to chop up these larger chunks while it's still in the bowl to make it a little easier for the food processor to manage. And I'll put the cinnamon in now. And I'm going to hold off entirely on the milk to see what we need, or whether we need it. So here comes the noise. Yeah, and sometimes the liquid just helps the frozen chunks to move around in the food processor a little better. So I did add some just there. Sometimes you'll need to go in there and stir it up a little bit. It's still pretty thick, so I'm not too worried that it's going to get overbeaten. Tending to just, the frozen chunks have kind of created a raft on top of the thawed part. So let me see if I can get this stirred up. The other option is to use the blender, but of course right now that's full of chocolate mousse. So I'm going to try to get this done in here. Progress. I see signs of soft serve in there. There is also a machine specifically for this process called Yonanas, Y-O-N-A-N-A-S, like yogurt and bananas. But there's no yogurt involved, Yonanas. And it basically creates the soft serve by putting the frozen fruit down a chute and scraping it. It's got an internal mechanism. It goes down the chute and hits a rotating scraper. It's only for that purpose. I do have one. I try not to buy gadgets like that, but it was so tempting. And so that's an option if you prefer not to do something like this with your food processor. It is faster, but it's another piece of kitchen equipment. So. I think there's enough in there now that I can put some in a bowl. And again, I like to serve this with fresh fruit. Just it adds some color to the bowl. And you can see this is sort of a soft serve consistency now. So it's scoopable, but you want to eat it relatively soon. You can, if you'd like to save this for later, you can freeze it. But of course, with the high water content of the fruit, it will freeze pretty solid. So when you take it out later, you're going to have to let it warm up a little bit before you can scoop it. Let's see. So for this, I'd like to add some fruit right on as a garnish. This is peach ice cream with cinnamon. Of course, if you were doing red berries or cherries or something, it would be a beautiful pink color. But probably on this, I'm going to add maybe a strawberry and a couple of blueberries to the top. And bring that to life a little bit. You could add some flaked coconut if you want. You could add some granola, you know, lots of different ways to dress it up. Maybe a little bit of mint too. All right, so there is a bowl of peach banana ice cream. And really, the banana kind of blends in to the background in all of these flavors. So you don't really think of it as banana ice cream so much. It'll taste mostly like peaches. I'm just gonna grab a, it's really good. There's a little banana in there, but not much, mostly peachy. So that's another option for you. Great in the summer, of course, but really good at any time of year. And it's perfect for those bananas that you have in your kitchen that get overripe and have brown spots, because those are super sweet bananas. Slice them up and put them in the freezer. Then you don't have to worry if you have time to make this tomorrow or next week. The fruit is waiting for you. And of course, you can buy frozen fruit from the store in a bag if that's more convenient for you. I've not seen bananas that way, but things like berries or peaches or mango are all available. So let's move on to recipe number 3 then. I'm going to have to move some things out of the way here. I'm going to put the ice cream in my freezer so it doesn't melt into soup while we're talking. There we go. Okay, so the last recipe I wanted to demonstrate today is the making of the lemon curd for the lemon squares. I can show you what they look like when they've been made. I have some. I'm just going to add a little bit more powdered sugar to it then. I added powdered sugar to them earlier, but in the time they've sat now, the powdered sugar is kind of soaked in. But these lemon squares may be reminiscent of a dessert. If you grew up, when I did, which was in the 70s, everybody made lemon squares. It seemed like a very popular dessert. So these are lemon squares that I made actually a couple days ago. And I will tell you, this recipe does not store that well. You know, the original recipe with this was made with egg yolks. And as I recall, it lasted better. This tends to release some of the water or milk that's in the lemon curd after it's been stored in the fridge for a couple of days. So I would suggest you make and eat these probably the same day or the day after, because after that, it tends to get a little bit of like water on top or underneath the crust. But you can see they're bright yellow. And that is as a result of the turmeric that we add to get that color, because we don't have the egg yolks, right? We're leaving those out. So let me show you how that curd is made. And I have another idea. If you don't want to make lemon squares with a shortbread crust underneath them, we can use the curd and some fruit to make a nice kind of stacked parfait. That can be another option. So you don't need the shortbread crust if you prefer not to eat it. I would say this recipe is really heavy on the sugar. And of course, there's a stick of bread crust. So again, it's a treat, not something I would suggest people eat all the time, but definitely an improvement over the version that used the egg yolks and the butter. So let me show you how the curd comes together. Okay. This out of the way. So the curd needs to be cooked over medium-high heat until it comes to a simmer, and then it just thickens up, because the primary ingredient in this that helps it thicken is the cornstarch. my ingredient tray for this recipe. One note I want you to take for this recipe, I mistakenly put coconut sugar into the part of the recipe for the lemon topping. And coconut sugar, as you can see, if you don't have some or haven't seen it before, is kind of brown, like brown sugar. So to achieve that bright yellow topping that we want, this is probably not going to help us out. It's going to turn it into something that looks akin to brown mustard, maybe, you know, kind of a brownish yellow. So I would suggest using white sugar there. One thing to note about white sugar for people who are truly what we call ethical vegans, they choose to eat vegan because they don't want to harm animals, among other reasons. Sometimes white sugar, like, you know, your typical grocery store white sugar, is bleached with animal bones. So that might be an issue. If you were having someone over who's a strict vegan, this might not be the best choice of a recipe. You might want to find something else. Okay. Let's go through some of the other ingredients for those of you who don't usually make vegan food. This Earth Balance is a wonderful substitute for dairy butter. It is made with vegetable oil, a blend of vegetable oils. It certainly has fat in it, just like butter does, but it's not from dairy. There are other kinds as well. Miyoko's is another brand that you'll probably see in the supermarket. But basically comes in sticks, just like regular butter. And we're using one of those sticks for the shortbread crust. Again, I'm not making the crust now. It's pretty easy. You can follow the recipe. But I just wanted to show you that as an ingredient. Other than that, we have the white sugar, like I said, some cornstarch. And I'm just going to make a half a recipe because I really don't need a full batch of it, just to show you this parfait idea. So all of my quantities I've cut in half from what you have in front of you. I have fresh squeezed lemon juice here, some vanilla, and also a little bit of lemon extract to really boost up that lemony flavor. And this is, what is this? Oh, the turmeric. How could I forget? That's what makes it yellow. I was looking at it. It looks kind of like coconut sugar, and I thought maybe I had put that in here. But no, this is just a tiny little bit of turmeric. It's not going to make this taste like curry or anything like that. It just really gives it a beautiful yellow hue. And it's kind of magical because as you're cooking it, it is a pale yellow. You'll see this in just a second when I put everything in the pan. And it's pale yellow for many minutes. And then suddenly it turns bright yellow, almost too yellow, but that's what it does. So we're going to start by mixing the cornstarch and the sugar together. I did mention it's a sugar intensive recipe, and you saw the amount of sugar I just put in there. This is why I suggest eating fruit more often than making fancier desserts like this, because fruit sugar is a natural sugar. This is the soy milk that I'm using. You could use almond milk or oat milk. The turmeric goes in. You can see already that starts to do its coloring job. And we're going to put in the lemon juice also. It's possible that this could curdle, but it'll uncurdle later. So don't worry about it. And I'm going to turn this on. There's a little noise of the fan, but I think you won't be able to hear it. And you just stir this with a whisk. Get all the lumps out. They will sort of come out naturally as the mixture thickens. And so you can see right now that this is sort of what I would call a pale yellow. But wait and watch. And it'll thicken up and suddenly turn bright yellow. There are lots of recipes online that you can find for vegan puddings. If you choose not to make a mousse per se, but you want a recipe with a pudding, they're often thickened in the same way with cornstarch. Make chocolate pudding or vanilla pudding. The thing I would recommend you avoid when you're making a pudding is coconut milk. A lot of recipes call for coconut milk. And like I said about coconut oil, it's very high in saturated fat, and canned coconut milk is as well. I'll step away and grab a can. So sometimes, seldom, but sometimes I'll make a curry, for example, with some coconut milk. I always try to buy the light coconut milk. Really, this is just regular coconut milk, and they've added water, so you could just buy a can of regular coconut milk and then dilute it yourself. But I find that this light version gives enough flavor without loading on the calories and the saturated fat, but it is still somewhat high. Okay, so this is really thickening up fast here, and you can see the color is coming on. I'm turning my burner down. So all of a sudden it turns this beautiful hue of lemon yellow. Maybe I'm going to take that off the heat for a second. Yeah, and that's thick enough. You can see how thick that is getting. So unplug that so I don't hear that fan. And just clear things out of the way here. I don't want to put it when it's super hot into a glass. But my thought is that you could use this with some fruit. So I'm going to start a glass with some blueberries, put a little bit of this on top of it, and then add some more blueberries and maybe a strawberry on the top. So we have this wonderful sort of lemon pudding, which is basically what this is, juxtaposed with the tartness and the sweetness of the fruit. So let me get those items for you. So I chose a glass for this. It's kind of a cocktail glass, but I like it because it has a flared top, and I thought it would look nice with the fruit in the bottom, and then the lemon curd. So let's see, I've got some washed blueberries here. Just going to put a few spoonfuls of those in the bottom. So now we have a bottom layer, and I'm going to add with a larger spoon this lemon curd to the top. If I wasn't doing this for you right now, I would let this cool a little bit, but not too far, because once it cools completely, it sets up just like on the lemon bars. So you do want to do it while it's still warm. You can see we're getting a nice layer in there. Hold it up to this camera so you can see, right, the layered effect. And then we could put raspberries on the top. We could put some more blueberries, maybe a little bit of both. But especially in the summer, I find, I'd much rather have some fresh fruit with just a little bit of something sweet than having too much for dessert. So again, I think this would be a really nice dessert. I'm finding this glass is actually a little bit smaller. I would recommend using a taller glass for this, or maybe a wine glass that has sort of a taller bowl to it. But I'll hold this up here so you can see it. So you get the idea of the striped effect. So that's another thing you could do with this lemon curd, and just skip the shortbread altogether, which had all the butter in it. So that's another idea. The last recipe I put in the packet is one that I actually demonstrated last fall. It's a lovely recipe for a cherry apple compote that comes together quickly. You can keep a bag of frozen cherries in your freezer and then use some fresh apples you might have on hand. You thicken it up just a little bit and the fruit juices blend and the cherries turn the apples pink. It's lovely and delicious, and you can enjoy it hot or cold. It's a great dessert, but I also like it with oatmeal in the morning. I eat a lot of oatmeal for breakfast, and it's nice to have that cherry apple pink fruit in your oatmeal. So that's the last recipe. Again, I'm not going to demonstrate it today, but I wanted you to have it because I really think eating fruit is so important. Fruit is full of fiber, it's full of vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals or plant chemicals that are healthy for us. So really try to eat, 3 to 5 pieces of fruit every day if you can. It sounds like a tall order, but you'll find if you eat a piece of fruit at every meal and then maybe one for snack and one for dessert, you'll get there. So I think that is what I have for a presentation, and I'd be happy to take questions from you about anything we've talked about or just about what it is to eat plant-based. I'm Deb Czech with Planted Platter. And there's information about how to get in touch with me at the base of your recipe pages. And I'd welcome anybody who'd like to reach out. You can sign up for the newsletter. And I will teach another library class in the fall, in October. But in the meantime, I'm teaching some classes this summer over at Pitney Meadows Farm. And you're welcome to come over there. And it's a hands-on cooking class. So I welcome your participation in that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deb. That was excellent.